I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championships.
The rivalries, it's up there on top of the list, man. And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. And welcome into JUCK on Bucks. Appreciate you so much for joining me on a Tuesday, a very happy Tuesday indeed. The Buckeyes keep a rolling here halfway through spring practice. Ryan Day had some really interesting things to say at his press conference on Monday, and we'll get to that, some of your comments. But first, the big news to start the week, as Ohio State safeties coach Matt Guerrieri secured the commitment of the number one safety in the country, Blaine Bradford, out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That's right, the home of LSU. I did a little video on that yesterday if you want to see a little more in depth on that. Obviously, anytime you get a player number one at his position, it's a huge deal. And what we're seeing in college football right now, when you look at Notre Dame and Ohio State playing for the national championship last year with defenses led by Xavier Watts and Caleb Downs, the two best safeties in the country, folks are realizing that you can really do some damage with a superstar safety when you get creative. And Jim Knowles did last year with Caleb Downs. And at times, the Ohio State defense was just impossible to score against because of that ultimate chess piece with that superstar safety. Now, Caleb Downs, a different level than most elite safeties. He's, the elite of the elite. But what we're seeing is the Buckeyes trying to get another guy that they think can kind of play in that role and be that ultimate chess piece on the defense at safety. And they've been in hot pursuit of a lot of really good safeties. Braylon Womack at the top of that board, a safety out of Mississippi. The relationship with him has been fantastic. I've thought that, they were kind of the leader right from the very start when they offered him. He was totally enamored with Ohio State. He's a Buckeye fan. He rattled off half of the 2019 roster. And this is a kid from Mississippi. And I've thought for a while that Ohio State was the leader for him. He's the number 2 safety in the 247 composite. And he's the guy, not Blaine Bradford, that I thought would be the first safety to commit in this class. Blaine Bradford, it just seemed like a long shot. And here we are. Matt Guerrieri secures the commitment of Blaine Bradford, obviously from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, but more so than that, as a difficult thing to overcome, his brother, a freshman cornerback for LSU. And it's just like, how do you get over that? He did. Matt Guerrieri got over it, gets the commitment from Blaine Bradford, who's a total stud. I mean, he's just, when we look at these two safeties, different type of guys. Womack, a rangy ball hawk, super athletic, quick. Bradford, more of your hammer, but also a great athlete. They could really complement each other. And boy, getting the two of them would be something. The Buckeyes will try to get 3 safeties in this class. But incredible for Matt Guerrieri, who's turning out to be an elite recruiter, trying to show that he belongs on this coaching staff with the best of the best recruiters in the country, because this staff is just chock full of them. Landed his number 1 safety on his board last year in Fahim Delane. That was his first cycle. This year, swinging for the fences in the top 10. Obviously, Bradford, Womack, but it's not just those two. You also got Simeon Caldwell, who is Tim Walton's nephew. And right now, Simeon Caldwell, who's a top 10 safety in the class as well, he might end up at linebacker eventually. He's a really big kid. But it appears that Ohio State and Notre Dame are the two in the lead for Simeon Caldwell. And this could be one of the better safety classes, we've seen in history. If you can get the number 1, number 2, and number 7 safety in the country, could be pretty ridiculous. Now, I'm trying to slow myself down here because at one point last year, it looked like Ohio State was going to land the number 1, number 2, and number 5 cornerback in the country with Devin Sanchez, Naeem Offord, and Dorian Brew. Also had some elite safeties like Trey McNutt in the pipeline there, looking like, wow, this could be the most crazy secondary haul we've ever seen. Of course, it didn't end up like that, but you still got the number 1 guy in Sanchez, so a huge success. And as for now, they got the number 1 safety in 2026. If you shut it down now, it would be a huge success. But they'll continue to fight for Womack, and I don't think this is going to negatively affect Womack's decision at all. When you look at Caleb Downs and you look at Lathan Ransom, coincidentally, in Blaine Bradford's graphic where he chooses Ohio State, they do the graphic. On that graphic, he's in the middle, and Downs and Ransom are on either side of him in that graphic. And this could be a potential duo like that. It would be something. But a lot of folks concerned, obviously. He's from Baton Rouge. Could he end up flipping to LSU? Is he using Ohio State as leverage to get money out of LSU? Yesterday on the show with Dylan, we just so happened to be talking about freshman tight end Nate Roberts. Buckeye freshman tight end Nate Roberts out of Oklahoma, out of Norman, Oklahoma, home of the University of Oklahoma. Blaine Bradford out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, home of LSU. How did Ohio State get Nate Roberts out of Norman, Oklahoma? Nate Roberts, for those that don't know, literally from Norman, Oklahoma, right? And his brother had transferred in to play at Oklahoma, guy who grew up a Sooners fan. How do you get that kid out of Oklahoma? And he basically just said Keenan was just a dog, man. He out-hustled Oklahoma and pulled that kid out of their backyard.
The amount of effort that they put into me during my recruiting process was something that I haven't gotten anywhere else.
I just thought it was a really interesting story and a parallel there that you cannot get out-hustled for your hometown dudes. You just can't.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is something that I'm sure it's not, it happens a lot of places. And even to some degree, I can understand why it happens. You feel like you've got a guy, in your backyard or in your home state, where you can always circle back to them. They're just there. It's almost like a known commodity. Like, hey, we have this in our back pocket. Let's see what else we can go get and kind of leverage that. And that's just not the case. Or you lose guys like Nate Roberts, who's from Norman, Oklahoma, and he's not going to be a Sooner. He made the comment that, like, well, obviously, you grew up in Norman, like this is what you do. If you're gonna have the opportunity, of course you're going to go to OU.
Growing up a Sooner fan, that's kind of like what you have to do when you're from Norman.
And I think coaches take that same approach, or they kind of fall victim to that same mentality that you're a guy from Northeast Ohio, of course you're going to come be a Buckeye.
And Nate's answer was essentially Keenan Bailey just out hustled everybody, made me feel like nobody else did. Blaine Bradford's dad, Stacy, was asked yesterday, essentially, is he really going to end up at Ohio State? And his answer was, great question. I can see individuals may think that way. Blaine will be at Ohio State. They simply did a better job recruiting him. This is a done deal. So that's what his dad has to say. Many people are going to hearken back to last cycle when Naeem Offord's dad, Kaori, was really getting in people's business on Twitter, who were insinuating that Naeem may flip from Ohio State. I think this is a totally different story here. I mean, like anything's possible, but Kaori Offord didn't even know that Naeem Offord was going to commit to Ohio State when they were sitting in Ryan Day's office. Naeem Offord committed to Ohio State. That was a shock to Dad. And Naeem totally surprised him, surprised Ryan Day, surprised everybody around college football with that commitment because the relationship just hadn't been developed that long. When we listen to Blaine Bradford, when we listen to his dad, Stacy, who's an educator, this reminds me very much of the Sanchez family and the Pettijohn family, which is to say, really, really sharp parents who walked their son through the process, guided him on the priorities, what order should the priorities be. And we look at what ended up happening with Riley Pettijohn, with Devin Sanchez, and we see how happy those families are and how happy the players seem to be so far. And this one really feels like that to me. And Bradford said he might be shutting it down. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if he does exactly what Devin Sanchez did, which is like, quit calling, I'm done. And I got a really good feeling about this one, really do. So I said in yesterday's video that I would not be surprised if he handles this like Devin Sanchez, ends up shutting this all the way down relatively quickly. And he came out and said it might be shut down. So might be, we'll see, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if this ended up just like the Sanchez recruitment, where he's just like, I'm done with it. Don't call, which was a really cool feeling. And Devin Sanchez, one of a kind. By the way, they were asking everybody what your favorite meal was, right? As they were coming off the field. So they do this thing where the players are coming off the field of practice and they'll ask them a goofy off the wall question, get all their answers. Who would be the starting five on a basketball team of all the players? was one of them. And, they do this. It's fun. The social media team does. And they asked him, if you could have one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be? So they're asking everybody, and you get normal answers that 18-year-olds would give. Devin Sanchez says lamb chops, but it doesn't end there. A couple days prior, they ask, if you could relive a moment in history, what would it be, and when would it be? And you got guys, saying, I want to go see Jordan in his prime. I'd go back and live that. Devin Sanchez says, I want to experience the 90s, like when my parents were coming up. Seems like an interesting period. Like, this dude is so different, man. Are those not the two most mature, awesome answers ever? He wants to go check out the 90s. He wants to eat lamb chops. This dude's just a different dude. It is so cool. Blaine Bradford said to On3's Chad Simmons about his commitment to Ohio State. I'm sorry, this was not about his commitment. This was a week or so ago, before he made the commitment, that he has good conversations with Coach Day, can talk to Coach McArary about anything. They won a national championship. They put people in the NFL, and they have great people around the program. So all the right reasons. I love it. The player himself, an absolute hammer. His film is ridiculous. I've always thought that, but tried not to get myself too excited about it because I didn't think this could happen. But now, as we look at the class of 2026, as it stands, you currently have 7 commits, a class that started out a little slower than most Ohio State classes. Obviously, they were behind the 8 ball, but I wasn't mad about the slow start here, because this day and age, after last cycle, when we saw more flips than we've ever seen, holding on to these guys for a long time is just not the way to go anymore. You don't need to do it. There's really no sense in doing it. Let's just take our time here. And Bradford makes the second 5-star in the class, joining wide receiver Chris Henry Jr., who is the number 9 overall player via the 247 composite, formerly an Ohio high school football player, now playing at Mater Dei in California. Those 2 at the top of your board. And after them, you have 5 4-star players, 4 of them out of the state of Ohio right now, with Max Riley out of Avon Lake, the number 114th player in the country, Sam Greer out of Hoban, the number 188 player in the country, cornerback Jacob Weatherspoon out of Avon, the number 167 player in the country, and Jaden Ricketts, wide receiver out of Pataskala. I think I finally said that right. You guys have ripped me a lot for saying that one wrong. I think that's how you say it. He is the number 253 player in the country. And then out of Florida, you've got tight end Corbin Fordham, the number 378 player in the country, which is ridiculous. He is so good. And then the only 3-star currently committed, Tucker Smith, who is the new offensive lineman out of Phoenix, top 1,000 player. He's going to climb really fast. That kid's really, really good. So that's where we're at right now. I'm really excited about it. Now, we've talked about his brother being a freshman at LSU. Got some comments with, like our buddy Troy here says, great news. I'm looking at this a little different. Going to play Sunshine Pumper here. Maybe get his brother to transfer, similar to Lorenzo Styles coming to play with Sonny. Sunshine Pumpers unite. Here's the funny thing here. So Fahim Delane is McArary's number 1 target last cycle. He commits to Ohio State, comes to Ohio State. His brother was at Virginia Tech. Then his brother goes into the transfer portal, and we're all thinking, well, we need safety help. Little brother just came to Ohio State. Surely we're going to get this kid. Where does he go? He goes to LSU. So now, and he's got 2 years of eligibility. So now, as it stands, if Blaine Bradford comes to Ohio State, we're looking at 2 sets of brothers in the secondary, 2 of them playing at Ohio State, 2 of them at LSU. How crazy is that? But when we talk about Blaine Bradford's brother, he's a cornerback, and he's a cornerback who would be in the same class as Bryce West and Aaron Scott, and with Devin Sanchez a year behind him. He's a good prospect, but a top 300 prospect. He's not like Blaine Bradford. He's not that caliber of player. I just don't see that there would be a clear avenue for him, and I don't really think it's a position of need for the Buckeyes. So I don't think that's really going to happen, but I'm sure they'd welcome him in if he wanted to. LSU been a little down on talent in the cycle for a little while, in the last few cycles in the secondary. he's probably got a clear path to playing there, a better path anyway. So not something I think is going to happen. Ryan Day's press conference. Let's get into this. So Bradford didn't come up in the press conference. I don't know if the guys got the word. I think it happened a little bit before that, but they were dialed in to their questions. They got to be dialed in for their questions. And Ryan Day led this off by talking about the spring game and how he's still intending to have the spring game. And he did that so that he could plug the concert to raise money for NIL. And that's happening at the Woody the night of the spring game, north of Nashville. Now, there's going to be some ex-players there, guys from last year's championship team. I don't know where to get tickets for this thing. I checked on the 1870 website. I checked on the foundation website. I don't see anyone selling tickets to get into this thing to raise money for NIL, or else I'd post it and fill you guys in. I don't know. The 1870 Society, their last post was before last spring game on their website. So I don't know what those dudes are up to. Kind of shows the effort that's being put in over there, which is not a whole lot. And that's saddening. I was with them from the very beginning, with my donations from the time they started, and I'm not doing that anymore with them. But a whole year and you haven't posted anything. Hopefully we get to see these NIL foundations they won't be phased out. You're still going to need them, but not so prominent. Most of it hopefully can come from the schools as we move forward here. But I did get my tickets to the spring game today. I will be in Club 2. If anybody wants to hit me up on Twitter, check me out at the spring game. I'm going to bring my travel mics. I hope to get a couple of quick hitters from a few of you guys. I'm also going to do probably a little post-game recap with my buddy Chad from the Best Damn Podcast in the Land. Check him out over there at the Best Damn Podcast in the Land. And we'll maybe do a little quick hitter recap of the game and maybe talk to a couple other people about things that they saw, things that stuck out to them from the spring game. As for the press conference, as we know, Deion Sanders, head coach of Colorado, Fran Brown, head coach of Syracuse, we're trying to have a joint kind of 3-day practice together, maybe do a little spring game together. They filed a petition with the NCAA to see if that could happen. And the NCAA shut them down because it would be a recruiting advantage, they said, which is a bummer. I would have liked to see that happen. But Ryan Day was asked, would he ever consider that? And he basically said, abso-flippin-lutely not. And the reason were the rules of engagement. Part of the way that they teach the guys at Ohio State how to practice is to take care of their guys. And Ryan Day is not going to trust another team to take care of his guys when live bullets are flying in a scrimmage. And I hadn't really thought about that. It's a heck of a good point. And of course, he's already covered that and thought about that. One step ahead of everybody is the best coach in college football currently. Asked about players and who's popping, and he mentioned some guys, but I thought the more interesting part of that answer was he was rattling off the rooms that were doing good. Linebackers, safeties, running backs, had all very positive things to say about those. Talked about the offensive line and the improvement at tackle. So good stuff there. Then he said wideout. Wideout. The top end is solid, but 4 to 6, they need to really come on for us. All right. Well, 4 and 5 are Mylan Graham and Bryson Rogers. Mylan Graham in his first spring, but everybody's feeling like he's coming along, right? Bryson Rogers, a veteran in the program now. So that was definitely surprising to hear him mention those guys as an area where, they're not doing so hot or they need improvement like quick. It's like, that's an area I thought was ironed down, solid. We're talking about these guys wanting to see him on the field here, clamoring to see Mylan Graham and Bryson Rogers. Coach Day kind of calling him out at the press conference, which he tends to do. Now, he doesn't do anything on accident. I'm huge on Mylan Graham. I'm big on Bryson Rogers. I think that was a little shot at them. And what we will hear a week from now is how good they're doing, 4 to 6, how much better they're doing. We kind of saw this with Jelani Thurman last year, where he kind of set that up and then 2 weeks later, kind of tore him down to build him back up. I think that's what we're seeing here with these wide receivers. But I did think that was interesting. talking about the quarterbacks and blocking out the noise, made a really interesting point talking about the recruiting process, how through your recruiting process, everything's positive. There might be some negative from a fan base if you end up flipping, your commitment. But other than that, positive from the fans, positive from the community you live in, positive from the coaches, from your teammates. Everything's positive. When you're a young guy in the program, same thing. Everything's positive. And then at a certain point,
and then it can turn negative real quick.
Things can get real negative. And if you are not blocking out the positive, you're not going to be able to block out the negative. So, he's talking to these guys right off the rip. Block it all out. Don't pay any attention to it. Because if you're not used to it, it can really affect you and it can affect your family. And you got to make sure it doesn't affect your family as well.
And more importantly, you can't let your family get affected by it, because that's, something that happens a lot is, family members can start to get involved and start to feel a certain way.
Which I thought was a really interesting point as well. In the age of social media, more and more we're seeing families of these college players getting involved on social media and, fighting back. And, a perfect example of this would be Jim Knowles' sister, who, if, she would go out and bulldog anybody who talked about Jim Knowles. Obviously not a player, but you get the point. It's kind of what he's hitting on. You can't let it affect your family, et cetera. Matter of fact, I wonder if that was a shot at her. Then he hit on what I'm calling the ZEN rule. So the ZEN rule, they now want the offensive lineman to have a primary position and a secondary position. You got your 5 starting offensive linemen, and if a guy goes down, they want to bring in the next most talented guy. And in past years, your next most talented guy might be a guard, and maybe your next 2 most talented guy, number 6 and 7, might be guards. But what if your tackle goes down? Well, your tackle, the backup tackle might be the 8th most talented guy. So now you're bringing in the 8th most talented guy, and number 6 and 7 are still sitting on the bench. Well, how do you combat that? You train guys in multiple positions so that your 6th best guy hopefully can play guard and tackle. Now you can bring him in instead of having to bring in the backup tackle and having a situation like Zen Michalski coming in against Nebraska. And this is a deviation from what the plan was last year. Last year in the spring, Ryan Day, when speaking about Tegra Shabola, the general philosophy there was he wants Tegra to be the best guard he can be instead of learning tackle as well and being good at tackle and good at guard. He wants him to be excellent at guard. And that was the line last year. Now, this year, after going through the injuries they went through on the offensive line last year, it's different. And he said he talked to Tyler Bowen about this from the very beginning when he brought him in. We want a primary position and a secondary position from all these offensive linemen. And that's why we've seen Austin Sareveld starting at tackle as we started the spring here. He's not a tackle. He's a guard primarily, and that'll be his primary position. He didn't say that. I'm saying that. This is my assumption here. He's going to be a guard primarily, but he's doing his secondary training at tackle because he already knows guard. So I think it's a great idea. I think it's a really good move. And I think it's kind of funny to, the 180s that a coach can do, they learn fast. He's only in year number 7 now, and times change, football changes. He talked again about a 16-game schedule, which means he's planning on making the national championship again. You have to play that many games. So that's awesome. I'm glad he's planning on that. Ryan Day made a really interesting comment about the defensive line. So when talking about the defensive line and the depth on the defensive line, how it currently stacks up, we've talked about this a lot, kind of ad nauseum on the show here. He did not sound comfortable at all, but he said we still got a couple of weeks.
You talked a few weeks ago about, the positions that you felt like maybe you could add some depth. Defensive line be one of those. Specifically at tackle, do you feel like some guys on that depth chart are starting to come along to where maybe you feel like you have more depth than you thought coming into this spring?
We need those guys to step up. I think there's certain things that have been good, and there's certain things that have flashed. But every time we say the word flash, that means it's probably not consistent enough. The ability's there. So it's an area that we've got to continue now in the second half of spring to see a push out of that group.
As far as the edge, he said, we've got a decent pass rush. We'll see if it's enough to move into
Pass
next
rush,
year.
right. I think that, with Caden Kenyatta, like you said, Logan, CJ playing there, and we're getting a decent pass rush right now. But we'll have to see over the next couple of weeks if we feel like it's enough.
And he's saying, we'll see if it's enough in the next couple of weeks that I feel comfortable enough to not have to go to the portal and try to get some help. But if he does, there is some help in the portal at edge, as David Bailey, one of the best edge rushers in the ACC out of Stanford, they fired their coach, Troy Taylor. He's entered the portal. And this is a kid, 6'3", 250, 81 pressures in his career, 14 and a half sacks. A kid from Mater Dei High School. I don't know if that counts as breaking the curse, but he would be the first Buckeye from Mater Dei, I think. But as far as the edge goes, a rusher like him, Ohio State looks like a pretty enticing place right now. When you look at a dude who wants to debut himself for the NFL, who had a bigger spotlight last year than Ohio State? This guy probably is very familiar with Ohio State's roster last year because of how many games they were on in the postseason, and currently the depth in that room. If you're a top-notch edge rusher, it looks like a pretty cool destination to go to. You can't buy that kind of exposure. But, of course, we wanted to hear Ryan Day say that he is incredibly impressed with how the depth is looking on the interior of the defensive line and on the edge. That's what we wanted to hear. That's not what we heard yet. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. You got a couple more weeks yet, but it certainly sounds like he is willing to go to the portal if things don't look great by the end of spring, which I like to hear. One thing he did mention, unprompted, was Ziggy Grady, freshman out of Alabama, top 100 recruit, just might be someone who can contribute this year.
I've been impressed with Zion Grady as a young player. I think that if he can learn and grow and get better and not get caught up in being a freshman and kind of flatlining here and continue to get better in the second half of the spring, I think he can help us as a freshman, which would be great. So there's a lot of guys grinding in there, and hard to make an evaluation with so much install going on, but certainly these next couple weeks will be big.
They are really happy with his development so far, and that's exciting to hear. Very exciting. All right. Recently, I've heard a lot of people, when they bring up Lincoln Keenholz, say, Lincoln's not the guy from the Missouri game. Don't hold that against him. And I was just thinking to myself the last time I heard it, like, who is holding that against him? He was a freshman scout teamer, didn't know the playbook. I think he had gotten snaps in like one other game in garbage time. And he was thrown in behind an offensive line with Enoch Vamahi as a swinging gate at right guard and a center who had never played center before. So I'm over here thinking, who in the heck would hold that against him? And I got this comment from our buddy Backyard Lures. I don't want Lincoln because of the Missouri game. It's really hard to get that out of my mind, but who Day chooses who is best. And I just got to say, man, I guess there are some people who think that. But as I said, buddy, that was 100% an offensive line issue. And that was a kid who he didn't even know the playbook. Like, he was running scout team stuff, wasn't practicing with the ones or the twos, had no idea what he was doing. So all that said, it was a valiant effort. He was tough as nails, and we should take that out of that experience, in my opinion. And then I got this comment about Lincoln from Kurt, who says, "Hey, Juck, I'm really starting to worry about you. If for some reason Lincoln beats Sayin out, I don't think you would survive it." And I'm just reading that going like, is that the vibe I'm giving off? I better check myself. That's certainly not the way I intend it to be. And I have said this over and over again, like last year, right? So when we have a quarterback competition, it tends to divide the fan base into camps. And last year, for instance, you had the Devin Brown camp, you had the Will Howard camp, and it's like they dig in and they take shots at the other guy because they want their guy to win. And it always puzzled me because, in my opinion, like, we should all be rooting for them both to do great, and whoever's best is playing because that's our guy. They're both our guys, right? They're always both our guys. In this scenario, Lincoln Keenholz and Julian Sayin are both our guys. If Lincoln Keenholz beats out Julian Sayin, I'll be thrilled because I think very highly of Julian Sayin, And that would mean Lincoln Kienholz is playing out of his mind and has improved to a level that I don't think, many people ever saw him getting to. Julian Sayin, I just don't see losing the thing. And when people talk about, this is a real competition, like, absolutely, it's a real competition. But I just don't think it's a competition. I think it's a competition that is very much slanted towards the guy with who's eventually going to win, and that's Julian Sayin. I certainly don't mean for it to sound like I am rooting for Lincoln Kienholz not to do well, or I'd be upset if Lincoln Kienholz won. Like I said, if he won, that would mean he deserves it because he's got an uphill climb here, despite being the upperclassman. Let's not forget, Kurt, Julian Sayin walked in and beat Lincoln Kienholz out as a freshman in like a month and a half last year. Not to say Lincoln can't get better, but clearly Julian's the guy with the leg up. He beat him out as a true freshman. So hope I cleared that up. I certainly don't mean to make it sound like I would be irritated with that. Now, I'd like to ask you guys to please like the show if you like it. If you don't like it, don't hit the like button. But if you do like it, please hit the like button to help me out. Also, subscribe to the show. If you're not subscribed, just helps you get the videos up quicker and helps me out with the show, etc. All right. And that'll do it for today. Stay tuned. I think tomorrow we got a really big episode, a really, really big episode. We'll see. Hopefully it comes to fruition tonight. If not, then I'm full of crap, but I think it'll be good. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. JUCK and Bucks out. Hey, like the video, would you?